In the absence of any more backbench contributions, we'll now move on to the wind-up speeches. Mr. Donaldson.
Very much, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and it's a pleasure to speak in this debate. I must declare an interest as a 25-year-old driver who's just renewed his car insurance. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, actually, so that's good to report. So I don't expect any honourable members here today to lend me their car for any amount of money. But I think the fact that 185,000 young people, or people, signed this petition just shows how much of an issue it is for young people, and coming from, as I do, and growing up and representing a rural area, I know how important cars are for young people to get around for work and for leisure and for their social life. And, you know, a lot of it coming from rural Aberdeenshire takes place in Aberdeen, and, you know, you need a car to get there, or I used to have to walk 40 minutes to get a bus before I could drive. So, it's a real issue. And I think the higher use of cars for every aspect of your life for a young person does increase the risk. But like any other age group, young people are not all the same. And there are good drivers and there are bad drivers. And obviously the statistics show that young people are more likely to have an accident. But I do think that as the honourable member for Bexhill and Battle mentioned, that looking at the individual and the use of black boxes to measure one's driving ability is so important. And one of my members of staff, her son has just passed his driving test and has a black box in his car, and he refuses to let his mum use the car because she puts the bad driving statistics up on his car. So I think it's important to say that not all bad drivers are young drivers, and it's also important, I think, to say that not all novice drivers are young drivers. And once somebody reaches 25, it tends to be that their driving, the cost of their insurance goes down. But as I said, not all novice drivers are young drivers. But car insurance cost has risen by 102% from 1994 to 2011, and that has been impacted in no small part, as has been mentioned, by whiplash claims, which now at approximately 20% to each policy. And this is particularly damaging to young people, and 96% of young drivers now think they are being priced off the road. And this is further compounded by the standard rate of the insurance premium tax, which will increase from 10% to 12% from June, and it will hit individuals with the highest insurance premiums hardest, young people and those living in high crime areas. So this, along with a whole lot of other things, is hurting young people, and indeed, as it's been said, that millennials and my generation are probably going to be one of the first generations that are going to be worse off than previous generations who've come before them. So I think that is something that we have to look at in the whole when it comes to premiums for young people and young drivers. Obviously, many jobs require individuals to be able to drive. Indeed, I would not be able to do my job if I couldn't drive. Being able to drive can still be the difference between being successful at securing a job and not securing one. And as has been said, fundamentally, it is about social mobility and increasing the chances of employment and making longer distance travel easier for those without access to quick or regular or close by public transport. One other problem that young people, particularly in rural areas, are facing is they're having to wait months, sometimes up to 5 months, to get a driving test. And as you can imagine, this increases their frustration. It also means they have to take top-up tests, spend more money doing that. So I would ask the Minister, I would like to see these powers devolve so that they can be better tailored to rural areas in Scotland and better tailored to the needs of Scottish drivers. And as has been mentioned, I learned to drive in a field with my grandpa, who was a farmer. when I was 16, and he was a former member of this place. It didn't help me pass my test first time, unfortunately, but I thought what my honourable friend was saying about 14-year-olds being taught in school how to drive was very interesting, because in primary school I did my cycling proficiency. I don't know how many other honourable members did that, but I was taught how to cycle in school time, so I thought I think it's interesting, and I think it's possibly something that should be looked at more widely. There was some points that have been raised that I disagreed with. Night driving, preventing younger people from driving at night. Where I come from in the northeast of Scotland, it's dark all the time, absolutely. In winter, it gets light after 8 o'clock in the morning, and it gets dark about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So driving at night would be a real issue, and that would prevent a lot of young people from working. West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, the constituency I represent, has the second highest number of road deaths in the UK. There's a number of reasons for that, but one thing that councils and the police and the fire service and the Scottish Ambulance Service are doing in Grampian, and it's been going for I think 11 or 12 years, and it was certainly on when I was at school, is a program called Safe Drive, Stay Alive, and it brings local schools together and shows them a presentation which is, to be honest, pretty horrific. It has graphic images of car accidents. It has speeches from people who've lost loved ones. It has speeches from people who've been paralysed by car accidents. And I think it has a huge impact on young drivers. And I think it's to some extent effective in scaring young people into realising that when they are learning to drive and when they do pass their test, they are in charge of a machine that can kill somebody quite easily. And I think it's important to emphasise that learning how to pass your test is not the same as learning how to drive. And they are, I think certainly for me, I'm still learning how to drive to some extent. Certainly, yeah.
Thank you, Sir Roger. I thank the honourable member for giving way. I wanted just to take him back to his point on curfews. I absolutely agree with that. The analysis seems to show that for those telematics companies who had put in place curfew penalties, that actually it was causing more dangerous driving because young people were trying to get back in time. And actually I would therefore applaud the move more, which is to give people hours on top, almost pay as you go, as a reward for good driving rather than curfews or matters along those lines.
Yeah, I thank the honourable member for his contribution, and I do think he makes an important point. And I will just finish, when I was at school, I had friends who were involved in serious car accidents, and I had somebody a couple of years above me who was killed in a car accident. So I think it is so important that we do have education to emphasise very strongly to young people that driving is an incredibly important part of life, but you need to take it seriously, you need to be careful, and you need to show respect for other road users. And I would just add that I think there are some other issues that are not particularly pertaining to young people. I think coming from a rural area, having Sunday drivers coming in from Aberdeen out to the country is incredibly frustrating. And people who don't know how to drive on country roads, I think, is incredibly dangerous. You can get some really sharp bends, tractors or sheep on the roads or things like that. So I think, it's not all about young people. We need to look at this much wider and consider all the options. But I'll finish there, and thank you very much.